So it's a rainy, miserable day, spring day, and I thought I'd go in the lead shed and do a couple quick videos. Planning on loading up some 410 shells, which I use the Ponsness Warren 375 reloader for. That's the only one I have for 410. It's a dual head. This is set up for 20 right now, and I'll do a little quick video showing setting it up for 410, which is the other side of the die head. And it got me thinking about Mec versus Ponsness Warren, and I really don't like one over the other. This one's convenient for me for two reasons. One, it takes up less footprint than having two separate reloaders for two different gauges. That's not a big deal because obviously these don't take up a lot of space. You can hide them away somewhere, but it is convenient to have one reloader that I can use for several gauges. I have 12 gauge dies for this, although I almost never use them. Just primarily 20 gauge and 410. I have another mech that I have set up for 12 gauge as well. And most of the 12 gauge things I do that are not target loads are either steel shot or buckshot or slugs. In all those cases, you're basically metering things out by hand anyway, at least in the and you would think for steel shot that wouldn't be the case, but I have done steel shot loads in this. It will dispense steel shot reliably, but it's not that, it's the powder. I'm trying to remember the name. I guess it's steel, the Alliance steel powder. It does not meter through any of the reloaders I have reliably, so you have to do it by hand essentially. So you're only partly using the reloader to crimp and such. But I digress. Most of what I do in 12 gauge is target loads, and we use this one for that, and that'll be a story for another day. But the single stage reloaders, I do like the Mecs. I mean, they're sort of the standard reloader and what I started with. I have two right now. This one here is set up for 16 gauge. And I'd say one of the advantages of this, we'll get back, one of the advantages of this over that is that you can set up for dropping your phone.
Well, it looks like Cracker, the camera holding Kracken, fell asleep on the job again. You know what? Why don't you just go home? Yeah, I know I won't be able to focus as well, but we'll use a box of shells to hold up the camera.
Okay. As I was saying before my phone decided to jump off the shelf, one of the advantages of the Mec is that I find it a little bit easier to set up for different crimp heights than this one, just because you do have the ability to really alter these things. This is set up for 2.5 inch shells. You see the plate riser on there. You can buy those. You could certainly make something that would suffice. So there's a lot of flexibility with these, and there's a ton of aftermarket parts for these. You can get, I mean, this shot bar is aftermarket. Most of the Mec reloaders, you have to have a separate bar for the shot charge, right? Single. This one would be a 1 ounce bar, and you put your powder bushing in there, but the shot bar is what it is, which is all fine, especially if you're doing target stuff. But I do a lot of hunting loads, and this, I don't know if Mec makes this or if this is an aftermarket. I bought this, from one of the catalogs. They're, one of the major catalogs. They all have them. These are great. They're totally adjustable, shot and powder. And they're very reliable. They meter well. You're very consistent. I do when I set up a load, I do tend to go through. If I'm setting up for the first time, I'll go 10 or 15 times I'll run the shot and powder through the scale, just make sure that everything is throwing consistently. And with this baffle on the powder, you know, I haven't tried the steel shot. I don't think it would matter. That stuff is really large. But you know, most powders cycle through this fine. And with the mech, if you don't have this, as you get to the bottom of the, you know, as you charge, your bottle gets reduced, and it only has, you know, a quarter or less of volume. The shot charge or the powder charge is not consistent, and it is with this. So this is a big help. Both these things I highly recommend if you're going to do hunting loads and you're going to be changing them around a lot. So that's a worthwhile investment. I'm happy with that. So I'm perfectly happy to use mechs. They don't have the full length resizing dies like this, and this is helpful doing, you know, some hunting loads. You're kind of pushing the limits of the hull, and you will sometimes buckle them, sometimes have them swollen. I did find that some of the hunting loads I was making with a mech when I was doing 20 gauge, they were, you know, I had to push them. I had a side by side, and I really had to push them into the chamber sometimes. They were not, you know, the brass might have been resized properly, but the plastic would bulge, and with this reloader, that's not the case. I in fact took a bunch of reloads that I had made with this and ran them through that just to get the holes to operate more better, as we'd say. And I shoot a lot of pumps now. I have, you know, however many 870s. I love the 870, and you know, so they load very reliably when you use this. So that might be an advantage over this. The other advantage being that you know, you for one spot you got your press bolted down. You can move to change the die head and change the gauges, which is great. But you know, they both produce fine reloads. The limitation again being that the crimp height on this is a little harder to adjust, and some things you can't do. You're not going to be making 2.5 inch shells on this. At least I looked into it once and I said screw it. It's just easier to do them by hand if you're going to go through that much trouble of altering all the tooling on it. And these things do not. There's a little set screw in there that retains this in place, and you really can't make all these. You can't. There's a little bit of adjustment in it, but I think as it gets pushed down, it just scrapes the set screw and pushes back up to the top setting. So it's not really made for that. But yeah. So if this was a versus video, is one better than the other? Absolutely not. They're both great. I like this, and I'm glad I got it. If you ever get a chance to get one of these, you know, I bought mine on eBay, and I paid not a lot for it. It's worn. You know, it's definitely got some slop in it. Right now, it's the pins out there, so it's not good. Doesn't seem. But yeah, they cost a lot more than this new. I mean, you could definitely buy 2 of these for one of those, and it's definitely not twice as good. But they're both fun. And so at any rate, we'll do a couple other videos showing how we're going to change the tooling around on this and load some 410 shells.
Happy hunting, them rods.